I'm Marcia Kavanaugh. Thanks so much for joining us. Well, finally, something resembling a state budget is starting to come together as lawmakers suffer through their third session since January. We'll look at what's on top, including the TOPS program, and what is not. And also the possibility of a third special session. Rising oil prices would ease many of the state's budget problems. We'll hear what the experts are predicting. We'll also examine dynamic growth along Canal Street. The latest on the Senate race, Mayor Landrieu seeking help in the wake of the Orlando tragedy, and our Future Watch segment looks at convention center expansion. Topping our list are tonight's Informed Sources. Errol, Laborde, producer of Informed Sources. Jeremy Alford, publisher, lawpolitics.com. Don Ostrom, Channel 12's Future Watch reporter. And Richard Thompson, reporter, The New Orleans Advocate. We're going to go over to Errol first, though, because later this afternoon there was a little bit of movement in the Benson case.
A lot of movement, actually.
Yeah.
The attorneys announced essentially a settlement. There was supposed to be a trial beginning Monday, and from what we know, the trial Monday was about some of the stock in the Saints and in the Pelicans, but it was non-voting stock, right. And so it was the last issue. The attorneys, well, through the Saints website, a statement was released saying essentially that it's over. The deal needs to be approved by the NFL and the NBA, but there's no indication that this is that there's going to be more, and so it's resolved. Now, as to the key question of who owns whom, they did refer to all of the Benson properties and say it'll be business as usual, which I think is the way to say that Tom Benson, keeps the sports franchises, and so everything that had been settled before. And so I think that, and we know from previous discussion that the Benson people in particular really, really wanted to get this over, that they wanted to give Tom Benson the dignity of living the rest of his life without having to worry about all this. And I don't think his family on the other side really wanted to be living with this all the time either. So I think everybody's happy to get this over. We will probably never know all the details. I mean, they were very specific about that in the announcement, that it's confidential, as usually happens in legal matters. Truth is, even if they told us, we probably wouldn't fully understand them, because these things tend to be really, really complicated. But in terms of what we all want to know most, is that Tom Benson still has the Saints and the Pelicans.
So this was the trust that was at issue was the one that also involved his daughter and his grandchildren,
right,
and shares for both Pelicans and the Saints within
right,
that trust.
Right.
And Tom Benson had to come up with things of equal value to the value of the teams also.
And apparently all sides have agreed that they achieved that.
So like you said, I guess we'll maybe never fully know the terms, but anyway, it's good news that they've come to settle. Good news for the community, good news for the Bensons. Right. Okay, thanks a lot, Errol. We're going to go over to Jeremy right now and talking legislature. They're recessed, for the weekend? Are they coming back on Monday? Are they coming back over the weekend?
Sunday night, the House will be back to vote on a big personal income tax change.
And so how are those taxes looking right now? I mean, we needed to raise a lot of money, but we're not really there.
And look, it's another 2 steps forward and 3 steps back for state government and legislature. We went into day 12 today of the special session learning that there could be a $200 million deficit in the current fiscal year due to tax collections going sideways again in the month of May. That's in addition to $600 million that's needed to fill the budget hole for next fiscal year. And right now, I mean, between the House and the Senate, there's somewhere between $200 million and $400 million of hitting that figure. It's looking more unlikely each passing day that they're going to reach that $600 million threshold that the governor wants them to hit. But at the same time, it's not a great feeling, I would imagine, to wake up this morning and to learn that it could be $800 million collectively between the 2 fiscal years, and they're trying to figure out what kind of tax bills to pass. That's
definitely not news that they wanted to hear, that's for sure. Now, in terms of the tax bills, the House really hasn't been too friendly to them, but there is one that they're calling a hybrid bill. Explain what that is. That seems to be gaining some momentum.
So the House has advanced about $222 million worth of tax bills to the Senate. The Senate has passed about $400 million, but the surprise bill of the session was filed this Monday by Senator Rick Ward. He's a Republican from Maryland, and the bill basically would force businesses to choose between the industrial tax exemption and the inventory tax credit. And look, surprisingly, there are a lot of conservatives in the House who are warming to this idea. The bill has passed the Senate chamber. It's moving over to the House side. The big question is when Ways and Means goes in on Monday, maybe Tuesday. Are they going to put that bill on their agenda? The House, meanwhile, is going to come back on Sunday and vote on a bill that would reduce the itemized deduction on the state income taxes. They couldn't cobble together 53 votes yesterday to pass that bill. Conservatives in the House really don't want to touch anything with personal income taxes. That's hitting, mom and pop down the bayou. That's hitting everybody. But this could be the compromise. The governor likes this idea of making businesses choose between those two tax programs. The Senate likes it, obviously. And look, you even have the chairman of the Republican caucus in the House saying that this could be a good idea.
Chairman, okay, the session's supposed to end, midnight Thursday?
Thursday at midnight.
Okay.
Yeah.
What happens if when it ends there's still not the budget there to meet the remaining programs that are left?
Yeah, we're going to see a governor do something we haven't seen him do in a very long time. Bobby Jindal would go into the new fiscal year and he would front load the fiscal year, meaning that, they were short money, but everything was funded on July 1st. Governor Edwards has said that he's basically going to take whatever is short, if short 200, short 300 million, and he's going to spread it out over 12 months, meaning that on day one, July 1st, the fiscal year, cuts will be implemented immediately. We're talking about possible closures, funding reductions. In some respect, I think folks who support these tax proposals want conservatives to see what this looks like. And until now, it's just been kind of doom and gloom scenarios. But to actually see it in practice, see places close down, see funding get cut, to see people lose jobs, I think may motivate conservatives to take a different look. At least that's what we're hearing from the folks who support these tax proposals.
What's TOPS looking like at this point?
TOPS right now in the House supplemental budget bill, which is where the budget process starts for these final days, is funded up to between 71 and 75%. So it's still short by about a quarter. But if lawmakers can come up with some more money, the Senate's pushing more money, we could see TOPS fully funded. There will be an amendment attached to that supplemental budget bill on Monday by the chairman, Cameron Henry, that will say if any new revenue comes in that we're not expecting, it will have to go to TOPS, safety net hospitals, higher education. There'll be a pecking order. And that's important right now. The Senate, the House, and the governor, there's not a lot of disagreement on those priorities. I think everyone thought that would be the big fight, but they all see those three as the top priorities to be funded.
Third special session, is that a possibility?
There's been some chatter about it, and the governor says that he can't envision that right now. And it would be. Right now, this legislature has served more consecutive weeks than any other legislature that's served in Louisiana since 1812. And I think people are getting sick of looking at each other. They have lives, they have families. So it would be hard to imagine anything really soon.
All right, Jeremy, thanks a lot. We're going to have to move over to Richard now. And you wrote a piece about Canal Street. It's kind of booming in the area around Claiborne.
There's a lot going on in Canal Street, even going back the last 5 years, just going from Rampart to Claiborne along Canal. We've seen more than $275 million in investments. And a lot of this is very recognizable. The Sanger, the Joy have both come back. Yeah. We've seen the apartments at the former Texaco building, the Elk Place apartments as well. But more recently, we've seen work begin on three buildings that are slated to become hotels right along Claiborne. The former Jung Hotel, the former UNO Foundation building, which will become a hotel, as well as the Canal Street Hotel, which was once at Days Inn. So
more hotel rooms, and then also housing, apartments too. Iberville is being redone.
Yep, that's a big piece of what initially started to spur that. Already the initial phases, it's been more than $210 million. And if all of these projects between the final phases of that and what's already been done on Canal come to pass, it could be more than $650 million.
Is Iberville being leased already? Are they doing any leasing right now?
They have, and the units, I think they're about 2 phases into it, or maybe 3 phases, and they're moving fast.
So people are showing big interest in living down there in that area.
They are. They're showing interest really in moving anywhere within downtown between the CBD and now into that area of Upper Canal.
Now, what about the State Palace Theater? That's an area in that block that just doesn't seem to be rehabilitating.
That's the one remaining theater downtown that still is kind of in limbo. And it's really one that the downtown leaders in the city kind of look toward as they're trying to bridge these two parts of Canal. As Upper Canal is starting to catch up with the rest of the block, but then you've got the State Palace Theater kind of impeding traffic in the middle. And it's changed hands twice in the last 2 years. We really haven't seen any work come with it. The bottom ground floor businesses have recently closed. And it's also, it brings concerns about crime as well, with no retail, no commerce right on that corner.
Earlier in the year, we saw that huge fire on the side opposite the French Quarter Canal. And I think that was a sign of how derelict the side opposite the quarter is, and how run down some of those places is. Any signs of improvement there?
I think they're still working along that corridor. I mean, that's another reminder, too. Once you see those sidewalks closed, you've got to walk out on the street, you've got to be on the other side of the canal. It really breaks up the flow.
I suppose it was a homeless person who'd set a fire in there? Or?
I believe that's what it was, yeah.
Now, you touched on it a little bit about urban dwellers. I mean, we're starting to see more and more people live in the downtown and the CBD area.
Right. Across the country, that seems to be the trend, is you got more either second home buyers or younger people that are wanting to move into the downtown cores. And really, the CBD is no different from that. And as this recent boom that we're seeing, not just along Canal, but all through the CBD of hotels and also condo buildings and apartments, is really driving that. There seems to be a real interest in living down in that area.
And people like having that walkable city, that walkable experience, which it certainly can do. So really the predictions, is it continue to be further growth for that area more? We're just going to continue to see it, because we didn't even mention the medical centers, when both of those are really up and running.
And the billions of dollars invested with that aren't even part of the total that's really driving. But between the Iberville and also the medical centers, it's starting to really move that this area that once used to be this real commercial corridor back into business.
Okay, well, that's good news. Good news for the city. Thanks a lot, Richard. All righty, we're going over now to Future Watch and Dawn, and we're going to continue to talk about expansion.
Booming and places, this isn't officially downtown, but close enough, which will also, in the near future, likely become an area where people live and visit, and it's what used to be known as the fourth phase of the convention center, looking at development. It's from Henderson Street right to the Adams Street power plant, but not including the power plant. The folks who are looking to develop that land think that once they start developing, the power plant also will come on board too. So that whole area upriver of the convention center will become a new multi-use neighborhood anchored by, it's hoped, a 1,200-room hotel that would be a host hotel to the convention center. We're the largest convention center in the country that doesn't have an anchor hotel right on property. And it's a hotel that kind of, 1,200 rooms sounds very large, but you're talking the Sheraton, the Marriott, the Hilton, roughly that kind of hotel, but we haven't had an updated one in quite some time. Private developers who did get a tax increment financing package passed in, I believe it was April, they may or may not have to use their special taxing district to develop these 47 acres. It's private developers who are going through a very lengthy process. They originally were hoping to have their development done for the 300th birthday of the city. It's not going to hit that. What might hit that birth date is redevelopment of Convention Center Boulevard and turning those first 2 lanes closest to the building into a more pedestrian mall, walkable mall, not shopping mall, but if you think Washington, D.C. mall, kind of area that's walkable and friendly to traffic. Convention Center Boulevard would then only be cars and 2 lanes of traffic. Traffic would be routed out of the city and the French Quarter along Tchoupitoulas and South Peters instead. The city and the Convention Center Board are in talks to try to make it happen. They expect to have an announcement later this summer on that. And if and when that gets the go-ahead, it would take about 24 months. So that phase of the Convention Center redevelopment would happen before 2018.
So that would really, in essence, be like a linear park?
A linear park,
eliminating
exactly.
part of the street.
Eliminating
using the neutral ground.
I think a lot of our convention visitors kind of take their lives in their own hands. I used to run in that neighborhood, and trying to run across Convention Center Boulevard, nobody pays any attention to a crosswalk. Nobody goes slowly. And there are people trying to get to their hotels or trying to get to restaurants, and it's just not a safe choice. So they're trying to redevelop that. And meanwhile, the convention center is busting at the seams. They are blowing and going, or I don't know what phrase you want to use. The bookings have been tremendous, they say. They are constantly busy. The auto dealers are coming in January for their 100th convention, 100th celebration, and they picked New Orleans. They picked that 3, 4, 5 years ago. The Heart Association's coming back. The orthopedic surgeons are coming back. The ophthalmologists are coming back. A lot of the big groups are booked and coming in, and they say bookings have not slowed at all. My big question was, has our recent spate of crime influenced anything? And fortunately it has not. But they do say they want to do this redevelopment and have an anchor hotel restaurants, shopping, a new kind of experience, just to continue to bring that 3-year, 4-year cycle back. So there's a new experience, and it would be a new kind of neighborhood at that north end of.
This week, the legislature passed a bill which, in effect, took away the legal obstacles to developing the Four Seasons Hotel. The governor signed that, I believe, today,
and so
that's going to be a real anchor for it.
The convention center anchored by new hotels, which I think we've learned through the NFL experience that new does attract customers. New stadiums, new hotels, new whatever. People do come to see.
Especially that hotel. It's one of the best sites in the city, right there at the river. It's a great location. Yeah.
So when you talk expansion, though, you're not talking about the building at all.
Not the building itself. It is the
other amenities.
It's the land contiguous to the building on the. I don't know my geography there. It's not really north. It's not really west.
It's upriver.
It's upriver. It's upriver from the convention center. But that 47 acres. It will, once the approvals happen and there's a lot of negotiation underway right now, it'll take about 4 years for construction and planning opening.
All right, thanks for the update. Over to Errol right now, and Mayor Landrieu has put out a call for the federal government to help cities in terms of homeland security.
Yeah, in 1994, a program was started called the Community Operation Policing Services, and what it was done was to try to funnel more federal money to local urban police forces. And back then, the figure was something like $1.2 billion that was spread out among the communities, and the program has fallen off to around, according to the mayor's figure, around $200 million. And so, using what happened in Orlando last week, he was making the case, and he did essentially an op-ed piece on CNN.com saying we need to get back to helping the cities with policing. And I thought he made one very striking point in particular when he was talking about how the emphasis, especially when in domestic terrorism, how it's changed, how it used to be that we thought about fighting terrorism. They said in the old days, intelligence about terrorist threats came from the top down, with foreign intercepts being shared with local and state police departments. Now the most important information is coming from the bottom up. And he goes on to talk about ISIS and that sort of thing. And yeah, I think it's, as we have more and more of these domestic terrorists, that the emphasis is coming to the local police, whereas in the past we looked in a different direction. And so he's really asking for more help at that level, more help at the intelligence level. And because he says this is where the fight has gone now.
Oh, so this is, of course, in response to the tragedy that happened in Orlando. Also, the mayor and the police chief added that this weekend is going to be the Pride Festival here in New Orleans, and they've beefed up security. They feel quite capable of taking care of making sure that everybody's safe, let's put it that way, as does the medical community, too.
Yeah, we've been able to pull together manpower for big events, like for Mardi Gras, like using the state police help, and so we've been able to do that pretty much. But it's just the ongoing, where I think all communities are falling short is the ongoing day-to-day intelligence apparatus. And that's where he's saying that the federal government needs to help the cities more.
Yeah, we need some help with that. Okay, thanks a lot, Errol. Over to Richard now. Oil prices, they have just, they sort of cratered, but they're coming back a little bit.
They have been coming back. Last week we saw oil finally for the first time in nearly a year rise above $50 a barrel. And while that's a good sign, it's still far from the over $100 a barrel we saw about 2 years ago. And so since hitting kind of a 12-year low in January, they've pretty much doubled. But the problem is also with that, how long is it going to last?
And that's, of course, having a real impact on Louisiana. Businesses in Louisiana, the Louisiana budget is really taking a hit because of the drop in the oil prices. So what's it looking like for Louisiana businesses that are dealing, that are part of the oil industry for our oil patch?
They're having a hard time. And at this point, they're expressing pretty guarded optimism. They see 50 as a good sign, but where is it going to go from there? And it's got to really sustain some time of either staying there or rising before they can really feel too good about it.
What brought about the drop in oil prices?
Just a global glut, and also U.S. domestic production as shale drilling picked up and advances in technology there really shot through the roof.
But so now we're seeing the oil prices sort of creep up a little bit then. So what has sort of spurred that along?
So the main thing that most people seem to think is causing the prices to start to creep up is mostly global disruption, as well as decreases in domestic production of oil. Where right now the rig count of rigs exploring for gas and oil has started to creep up in the last couple of weeks, but it's still down almost half from a year ago. But as those have fallen off, domestic production has fallen off as well. But some of these global disruptions that are also causing prices to start to climb back up, those are probably going to end at some point too.
So basically, what are we hearing right now? What's the prediction?
Right now, I think that federal forecasters are expecting oil to average about $42 a barrel for this year and then climb up a little bit for next year as well. So we'll have to just see from there. Okay.
All right. Thanks a lot, Richard. Going to go over to Jeremy right now for an update on our Senate race. And this week there was something that happened that one camp really didn't want to have happen, and that was an unintended broadcast.
Yeah, look, the staff of Lafayette Congressman Charles Bustani could have spent money promoting this. They could have actually planned a live Facebook video feed, but it would not have gotten anywhere near the attention that the feed that mistakenly went out did. And it appeared that there was a live feed that a staffer had started it in their D.C. office. And boy, they were talking about donors. They were talking about the opposition, it was live. So it's not like it was caught. This was on Facebook.
And so it was just being beamed out to whomever wanted to see it happened to come on there.
Exactly, and you had to be able to be there to catch it, to know it was happening, and there were a few eyes on it. There were a few reporters that caught it. And the Bustani team has been playing defense all week on this. Meanwhile, the other campaigns are saying, hey, you're not really supposed to talk, election chatter inside your district office or inside your D.C. office. You're supposed to be kind of a separation on that.
They spoke positively about State Treasurer John Kennedy, but in a critical way. They were saying this is bad because we can't find these problems with him.
Yeah, the suggestion was that they need to figure out a way to get ahead of him because most of the polls that we're seeing, independent and otherwise, have John Kennedy leading that field.
On the other hand, Congressman Fleming, they were very critical of.
No, exactly. Yeah.
So this discussion, let's get back to what you were just mentioning. This happened within his congressional office, not his campaign office?
It certainly appeared like his D.C. office, and the Bustani camp has been relatively quiet about this. They've played defense most of the week, but John Fleming put out a statement. His campaign put out a statement this week saying, "Look, we recognize the things in the office. This is his Washington office," they brought up some good questions about whether or not this represents some type of conflict or violation of. Because you meet a lot of these staffers, you'll notice they'll have two phones. They'll have one phone for campaign work, one phone for district work.
Mm-hmm. So any repercussions on this whole thing, do you
Probably
think,
not,
aside from
no.
people getting a little annoyed, or maybe more than a little annoyed?
You would hope that it would at least maybe get people interested in this developing race, but I don't even think it made that big of a splash. I think for insiders and folks who follow politics, we all got a good chuckle out of it, but I think it's pretty much over.
Well, let's talk a bit about this developing race. How is it developing?
It's developing slowly. I spoke with Errol yesterday. He is the Public Service Commissioner out of the Metairie area. And he told me that by the end of the month, he'll have a decision on whether he'll get in. So, this is a race that's just starting to load up with big names. Rob Maness, who ran against Mary Landrieu, and Bill Cassidy is running again. You got Fleming and Bustani, who are both congressmen. You got Treasurer John Kennedy. You have an independent in Troy Hebert, former legislator. Joseph Gow is still running. This week also, Abay Patel from New Orleans, a Republican, announced his candidacy as well. He has a background in economic development here in the city, and he also worked on Wall Street for some time. So there's a lot of names, and with so many people in this race, it's going to come down to money and organization.
Did you mention Carolyn Fayard? Is she running?
Carolyn Fayard is running as well.
Is she the only woman in the race right now, so far announced?
I believe so, and so she's the Democrat. There's also Foster Campbell, Public Service Commissioner of North Louisiana, backing of the governor. He's another Democrat, and you have a Joshua Peller, an oil executive from Acadiana, who's running as well. He's a Democrat. So
that is quite a list, and we might add one more to it, in Errol Scometta. He just hasn't made up his mind
yet.
yet.
And there's a few more we haven't gotten to. But yeah.
All right, Jeremy. Thanks a lot. Go over to Errol, and then some sad news this week, the loss of the Plaquemines Parish president.
Yeah, Amos Cormier Jr., he was he was elected in 2014. During the time, there wasn't that big front page type story that would have made, or certainly no scandal that would have made everybody familiar with his name. He succeeded Billy Nungesser, who was term limited. He had been a two-term member of the Plaquemines Parish Council, very active in church and athletics. He reminds me of the late Joe Yenny in Jefferson Parish, because Joe Yenny was a beloved elder man who everybody trusted, and who was a coach. And when you're a coach, a lot of people know you. And as was he was a baseball and a football coach, as well as a member of the council. So he was kind of like one of these beloved figures, really not a seasoned or a career politician. Someone fairly new to his office. He went to what seemed to be a routine procedural surgery, and something went wrong.
And so he was a man who was really dedicated to his community, to Plaquemines Parish.
He was all about Plaquemines Parish, yeah.
Father of five.
Father of five, and just well known within the community, if really not that well known outside the community. Apparently, his big project, if you recall, a few years ago, that the Plaquemines Parish government building was burned down. There was a fire, and that was one of his big projects to try to bring that back.
Well, our sincere condolences to the Cormier family, and also, of course, to the people of Plaquemines. All right, folks, time to look ahead. Errol?
Well, today there was a sign painter. If you recall that when the Times-Picayune moved out of its Howard Avenue building, that they said they were going to actually at some point give away the building. They haven't said exactly what they're going to do, but today there was a sign painter starting to paint the words Times-Picayune out. So that's another step in the transition in this the whole change. And of course, during the past week, there was a management change also announced there.
Right, so another change to the landscape of the city.
And we still don't know what's going to happen to the building, but they did say that they're going to donate it to a nonprofit.
Errol, do you think if they had set the clock tower to spin, that would have made it quicker to paint?
That's a good point.
I was, yeah.
Yeah, you were.
And like go-go dances on top would have drawn a lot of attention,
that
too.
That would have been something.
It would stop traffic, right, on the interstate. Jeremy?
After 5.5 months of legislative posturing, we have the final sine die of the year, possibly at midnight at Thursday. I can't remember lawmakers adjourning at midnight since I've been covering it. There's no full moon, no werewolf. Somebody may turn into a pumpkin. I don't know, but lawmakers after dark. I mean, that's irresistible, right?
All right, Jeremy. Thanks. Don?
Back to Canal Street. The Orpheum Theater will be showing movies again starting Monday, going through most of the summer. They're free on Mondays and Tuesdays, and the concession proceeds benefit the Tipitinas Foundation, and it's movies like The Breakfast Club and Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and just fun movies to go catch again. And Jaws.
Thanks a lot, Don. Richard?
Well, one thing, once the budget does start to get straightened out, I'll be watching about is how this shakes out for UNO, of course, with their new president in. They've had years of sharp declines in funding. They tried to get out ahead of it this week, released a report saying that UNO contributes about $470 million to the economy every year. A lot of that is in the form of spending by alumni, but it'll be curious to see what ends up shaking out for them.
I wish UNO the best. We are alums, Errol and I, so we certainly do wish the best for the school. And you have a good weekend next weekend. I hear you have
That's
big plans
right.
coming up.
I'm going to go see Fish.
For the
47th and 48th time.
No, you're not talking about Fish like people in Plaquemines Parish go see Fish. You're talking about the band.
The Seminole Rock Group.
Thanks a lot for being here. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next week for Informed Sources. Have a good evening.